Well, the Fish took the series in a three-game set that really showed the spectrum for both teams and how fun and annoying they can both be.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is a crossover between Locked On Reds, myself, Jeff Carr, one half of Locked On Reds, and Locked On Marlins, Jeremiah Geiger. We are going to break down this three-game set that was in Miami between the Reds and the Marlins, where the Marlins took 2 out of 3. The Monday and the Tuesday game, and the Reds got out of town with a getaway day win on Wednesday. We're going to break down a couple of interesting debuts for the Marlins, a interesting development on the pitching side for the Redlegs, and also ask a few questions about what the rest of the season looks like for both of these teams. They will both meet again in July in Cincinnati. Before we get to all of that, wanted to let you know, and that's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Jeremiah, it's 2 out of 3 wins for the Marlins in this series. The theme for me, it almost felt like, other than the Monday game where I felt like Max Meyer just took over, Max Meyer's slider just absolutely took over the Reds lineup. The other two games were just fraught with unforced errors by both teams, and that's what led to the other teams getting the wins.
Yeah, it felt choppy in those final two games, especially that Tuesday game. We had some blunders for the Reds. Xavier Edwards just kind of dribbles a ball down the first baseline, and one of the weirdest throws I can remember seeing from
I called it a
Ashcraft
fadeaway
there.
shot.
Yeah.
On that. Yeah, that was not a good throw.
But it was the little things that mattered in that game, because earlier in the game, the Marlins left a couple runs on board with some really dumb caught stealings. Like, you have runners in scoring position. Why are you trying to steal third? We had Matt Mervis, Augustine Ramirez gets picked off, and ultimately it was whoever got to the bullpen in those later innings. And then in the finale, when the Marlins were going for the sweep, same kind of thing, right? The Marlins get a couple runs on the home run. They still have opportunities with runners in scoring position, but they can't get the timely hit. They can't steal the base when they need to. And the Reds get out of town with a victory there.
And this, for me, is kind of what perpetuated the series, because I think the Marlins have a lot more young talent than people realize. It's a very easy thing to look on the schedule and see the Marlins and figure, well, that's a series win. And I think that that's what plenty of teams do when they see the Reds as well. But there's a lot of talent on both ball clubs, but there's not that experience. There's not that point that you look at where, okay, things are going wrong. Here's the guy that's going to step up and turn everything right again. I think both teams are kind of missing out on that right now. You've seen some good performances, as I saw you mention on our episode earlier this week about like Matt Mervis and guys like that are going crazy. And I'm hoping I don't butcher his name, but I know that
Eric Wagaman
just hit the ball super hard during this series. But of course, you also had the debut of Augustine Ramirez, who the Reds, I don't think, knew how to get out. Because he just kept hitting the ball everywhere and getting all of the extra base hits that there were to have. And then on the other side of things, like we talked about, those unforced errors, the Graham Ashcraft throw, there were a couple of base running blunders on the Reds side as well in some different innings. But even more so, the Reds had multiple innings where they had multiple runners in scoring position, and then they were shut down and they couldn't do anything, couldn't come back or, extend leads. And then ultimately the Marlins came back in that Tuesday night ball game and got the series win. For me, that's kind of what I'm going to take away from it. There were a lot of fun performances that I want to talk about in a few minutes, but it's the youth and the not even necessarily the inexperience, because on the Reds side, you've got some guys that have time under their belt, but it's just not being able to recover from those mistakes.
Absolutely. You have on the Marlins side of things, you mentioned Augustine Ramirez, and when he got called up, the news broke Sunday night. I was ecstatic. I could not wait because of the hype of this prospect. The Marlins were coming off a week in which they went 1-5. They got the doors blown off in Philly. the starting pitching was abysmal. And so I look at the Cincinnati Reds and I'm saying to myself, okay, they're a good club, but we got to stop the bleeding here. And Augustine Ramirez came in and brought that spark. He had 3 extra base hits in the first 2 games of that series. A couple doubles in that second game, over 100 miles an hour, including a 110. I mean, he was smoking the baseball. And I can speak for a lot of Marlin fans when I say that, to me, that youth movement that the Marlins are having is evident with Augustine Ramirez in particular. And then the starting pitching, I think we saw a outing from Edward Cabrera. I mean, Max Meyer was dominant. The 14 strikeouts, 11 on the slider. But Edward Cabrera gave the Marlins a chance to win. He had 5 innings, 7 strikeouts. And that's really all you can ask for a pitcher that, quite honestly, I don't have a lot of confidence in. But it was good to see, him give his team a chance to win the ball game in the later innings.
I don't know if there was this graphic on the Marlins side of the broadcast, but there was a graphic on the Reds side during the Max Meyer game where after Meyer got his 14th strikeout, they said that that's the most strikeouts against the Reds lineup since Max Scherzer did it back in I think it was either 2019 or 2021, one of the 2 years. I forget which year it was, but I'm like, man, anytime you put a guy in the same sentence with Max Scherzer, that's a pretty big – and, hey, they're both named Max. Maybe it's something about the name Max.
It's good company to have right there if you're a pitcher. Second most strikeouts in Marlins history, actually.
Oh. And to think of the guys that have been on that list, I mean, there's plenty of talent there to really deal with. I mean, you're talking about young Dontrell Willis, you're talking about Jose Fernandez and all those guys. So to be on that list is pretty substantial. That slider though, I can still close my eyes and see a couple of swings and misses on that slider. And I'm picturing backyard baseball when you could throw the special corkscrew pitch and nobody knew where it was going to go. That's basically how that pitch turned it. About the 6th inning, I'm just like, he's throwing it. Don't just leave your bat on the shoulder and just walk back to the dugout. Forget about it.
Right. For me, like watching that game, the amount of confidence I felt watching Max pitch was unparalleled to any previous start he's made. Like it felt like the Reds just didn't have a chance. It was going to be a slider away or he's going to dot the changeup to a lefty. And there was really nothing they could do about that. It was just really unexpected, but just a testament to his development this offseason. And he's the best pitcher that the Marlins have had statistically. Right now, I think he's top 3 in strikeouts in all of Major League Baseball. So if you told Marlins fans that before the season, I think they'd take that in a heartbeat.
Hey, you guys got a Cy Young winner from just 2 years ago who's still on the roster, so that's definitely saying a lot. But I know this. There was definitely I kind of want to dive into Augustine Ramirez a little bit more, what he means for the ball club, and a few other performances that were very uncanny that I think we should take a look at here coming up next. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about Amazon Fire TV because they've got this great feature now where you can turn an Amazon Fire TV stick into an Xbox. You heard me right. It's a little bit cheaper than an Xbox, too. Seriously, though, as long as you have the Game Pass for Xbox, you can get a Fire TV stick and you can pair a controller to it. Could be an Xbox controller, could be a PlayStation controller, and you can play your favorite Xbox games. I was just playing, before we hit record, I was just playing the Halo Master Chief Collection with a PlayStation 5 controller. Not making this up. Go get yourself a Fire TV stick now. They got some great prices over on, you've got Amazon.com/Fire TV locked on. You've got some great prices over at Target as well. Go get yourself a Fire TV stick. Plus, they've got all of your favorite shows and so much more. Fire TV Channels also has Locked On streaming program. Check out Fire TV. They've also got your favorite Xbox games and all your favorite programs. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Thanks for always making Locked On Marlins and Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. And shout out to our everydayers out there. If you're not an everydayer, you can become one by clicking that subscribe button here on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting platforms because we're on all of them out there. All right, so Augustine Ramirez, big debut. For you, it sounds like he's your most important debut that you saw. Where do you rank Ronnie Simon and how he fits into the future of the Marlins and moving forward? Is Augustine Ramirez an obvious lock, or is Ronnie Simon an easier lock for you?
Well, let's start with Ronnie Simon, because he is a very interesting player that the Marlins brought in. He's a career minor leaguer. He's 27 years old, 7 years in, or 25 years old, but 7 years in the minor leagues, played with the Rays a ton. The issue is, he doesn't really have a position, and he doesn't have that one tool. Now, what he did in the series, he did get a couple hits. He's scrappy. He can play left field. He can play second. But right now, ultimately, he was called up due to the injuries that the Marlins have had. They wanted another utility piece. And so I'm not as high on him. He's not going to be ranked in the top 30 prospects for the Marlins, but he's a good story. And you always want to see those good stories. He loves the game of baseball. Actually, after his debut, he had a baseball, I believe, from that game, and he had all his teammates sign it. I thought it was a really cool story, just like the process of getting to the show. But the real prospect for the Marlins, it's Augustine Ramirez. To me, he is the most exciting offensive prospect the Marlins have had since probably Jazz Chisholm Jr. And I don't think that's hyperbole. He plays a premium position in which the Marlins have had a black hole at for years. Since JT Realmuto, Miami hasn't had any consistency offensively from the catcher position. Ramirez, there's no worries with that. The floor is super high with his bat. The exit velocity's there. He'll hit for power. He also has a really good eye, so he'll draw his walks. Now the question is defensively, is he going to stick at catcher? Me and you talked about this before we hit record. When it comes to carrying 3 catchers on the major league roster, it's kind of unheard of. And with Nick Fortes coming back in a couple weeks, the Marlins are going to have a really interesting decision to make, especially if Ramirez continues to hit.
It's funny you mentioned 3 catchers, because I almost feel like the Reds are about to have to do that. Tyler Stevenson is working his way back. He's currently doing a rehab assignment in Louisville with the Bats. And all reports are that as long as he doesn't suffer any kind of setback, he should return to the Reds roster whenever they return home next week to face the Cardinals. So with that, you look at a guy who was hitting the cover off the ball on Wednesday. He's been hitting the cover off the ball all season long. And I say all season long. Austin Wynns doesn't play every single day. But when he plays, he makes the most of his opportunities. He was a triple shy of the cycle in Miami, and he hit the game-tying homer off Sandy Alcantara early on. He played add-on in the top of the 9th inning with an RBI double. Like, I love what he brings to the plate for the Reds. And this is a guy that if it weren't for Tyler Stevenson's injury to begin the season, he's in Louisville. And he might still be in Louisville, and there might not be an opportunity for him in the majors, but he's really carved out a spot for him. There's a chance here that I see the Reds making the kind of roster moves where Tyler Stevenson DHs more early on this when he returns to the lineup. You have Jose Trevino and Austin Wynns still rotating as catcher, because also Jose Trevino has been very good since coming over from the Yankees in that trade. And so you're really happy with what the catcher position has provided for the Reds. And that 3 catcher thing, you mentioned it's a little bit unheard of. The Reds did this a couple of years ago, and we hated it. But quite frankly, they did it before they knew anybody was doing anything at all, and they did it, and 3 guys really didn't perform that well. Right now, they've got 2 guys that are performing super well, and bringing Tyler Stevenson back, it's just hard to say that Austin Wynns deserves to go down to Louisville after hitting over 400 with the opportunities that he's been given.
Yeah, anytime you hit a home run against a Cy Young winner, I think that's a pretty good indication you're doing something right at the plate. It's a good problem to have. I think we can take a step back, and for the Reds and the Marlins, when we talk about that catcher who really kind of came out of nowhere, Austin Wynns, Augustine Ramirez, if they play their way and force their way to stick on this roster, then that's a good problem, because
right.
I've been a Marlins fan for a long time. I've seen some bad performances where I want them off the roster. If somebody is here, a prospect that I want to stay on the roster, let's do it.
Right. No, and that's it's easy to say, and my goodness, we're having so many conversations off air between my co-host Steve and myself and other friends that it's like, this guy, you should send him to AAA. He's been horrible so far. And it's like, it's early on. Let's wait. It's guys like Austin Wynns that skew all of that and are like, give this guy $1 million, $1 million contract, whatever. That's
extend him now.
Yeah, extend him now. But also on top of the catching performances, it was interesting to watch the bullpens in this game because both the Reds and the Marlins are similar in how they're approaching their bullpens right now, in that neither team has a bona fide closer.
Right.
And the Marlins saw the Reds closer from last year. He is not their closer this year. Alexis Diaz, boy, he couldn't have looked much worse in his appearance on Tuesday. But then on the other side of things, like the Reds saw a lot of the Marlins bullpen as well. And that was kind of the difference in both games, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I think the first thing with the bullpen is, like you said, the consistency at the closer position has been all over the place. There is no consistency. Clayton McCullough, the Marlins' new manager, just hasn't found out where he wants to go in the 8th or 9th innings. And to me, I'm a very, regimented person when it comes to the bullpen. I want to see a 7th inning guy, 8th inning setup man, and a closer. I just think that's the way it should be. Marlins are doing the complete opposite of that. But in Tuesday's game, they did roll out 3 pitchers who I do think are their best relievers in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Lake Bacher, he's got 4 pitches, looked phenomenal. Got a splitter. You don't see that too often out of the pen. And then Anthony Bender and Calvin Fauché, who I thought could be a really good closer this season, and have all-star potential because his stuff is that good. He just can't locate to start the season. He pitched a clean 9th and got the save. So that was encouraging to see. But like you said, in the key to these last 2 games, the Reds bullpen, Alexis Diaz, not so much. I think what's funny is on that Kyle Stowers 3-run pinch hit home run, he does the thing like his brother, Edwin, for New York, where he just points up at the sky. I'm like, Alexis, come on now.
It's like, that's not a pop-up. He hit that really hard, dude. That's not.
Yeah, it was a rocket to the opposite field. I'm like, I wonder where you learned that from.
Yeah, and honestly, the running game Marlins base runners just ran wild on him, and that was a point of emphasis for a lot of like beat writers and stuff like that after that game. They're just like, is this something he could ever fix? Because the wild leg kick that he has as part of his motion really opens it up for anybody to get a stolen base off of him. And then on the Wednesday side of things, when you see, Ian Gibaut come in and do well, Tony Santillan really redeemed himself, where Tuesday night didn't seem like Tony Santillan could find the strike zone. Terry Francona realized that, pulls him out quickly. I was glad that he did that, and Scott Barlow was able to get the outs there. But ultimately, it was just interesting to see the mixed bag, because I sort of approached this Reds bullpen at the beginning of the year that not having a bona fide closer meant they had multiple options, and that's a good thing. I'm starting to feel like I was wrong in that, and I'm starting to feel like that this is the whole same deal of like, when they say in football, when you got multiple quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterback. Right. I'm starting to wonder if, my thoughts that the Reds had multiple closer options, they don't have any closer options.
They did a great job, because Singer went 6 innings. He only gave up that 1 home run. That was the one mistake. But I looked at the box score. You have zeros across the board for Miami. That's a testament to all the pitchers that game. They really redeemed themselves, I think, to at least take that final game. Because, getting swept is just demoralizing. I think it's one of the most painful things. If you're a fan, you watch your team get swept. I'm like, where do you go from here? You got to restart all over again.
Right. Because that's the thing about baseball, is that you can win one game 24-2. But then when you go and you lose the next 3, then that 24-2 feels quite hollow. And I was really glad that the Reds were able to avoid that, because now they head to Colorado, going to the mountains. I know that Miami was heading to Seattle next. That's a heck of a flight.
It's going to be some late games.
It's going to be some late games on the East Coast, I'll tell you that. We'll discuss what these series and the following series after that mean for both of our squads coming up next.
There is nothing better than catching an MLB game live. You got the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. There's last minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, so Game Time takes the stress out of buying your MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. one of my favorite things about Game Time is the ability to look at the seat before I purchase it and also not get tricked by any hidden fees. What I can't stand is when I pick a ticket and I'm set on this baseball game in this section, this row, and then there's $50 more added to my ticket. I'm like, where'd that come from? Game Time doesn't have all that. It filters out all that stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, go create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcasting apps. We're seriously on all of them out there. And I was trying to hit the right button there, and I got a little bit distracted because I love the throwback Florida Marlins hats in the background. Always loved that old logo and the old uniforms from back then. I'm a big proponent of that stuff, but looking forward to what both of our teams have coming up here. I did find it intriguing, and part of the reason that I asked about Ronnie Simon a little bit is I'm trying to find the angle as to why Jesús Sánchez is going to be available for trade, and hopefully the Reds can get him because the Reds are in need of outfielders and stuff like that, and as the season drones along, it feels like some guys are figuring it out, and maybe the Reds outfield can get better from within. But I'm always scouting to see who might be available at the trade deadline too.
Yes, Sanchez, we call him the Sanchez. Jeezy, he is the longest tenured Marlin. You know, he's a goofy guy. We all love him. But the thing is, he's never really met his true potential. I remember a couple years ago, I was watching this game, and we were at Coors, and he hit a ball 505 feet up literally against the Coors sign, just crushed it. The power's always been there. But he started off this season injured, and the Marlins have a youth movement going. They want to see the younger guys play. Kyle Stowers, Dane Myers, and then Griffin Conine, who unfortunately is out for at least 2 months with a dislocated shoulder. It looked pretty bad. Jesús Sánchez, he was kind of phased out of the Marlins' long-term plans. I think that's the consensus right now. I've said this before. I would not be surprised if he's available at the deadline if the Marlins are out of contention. He's not a great fielder. He doesn't have, a consistent part to his game other than the tool of power. That power tool is always there. But absolutely, I think Sanchez, as much as I like him as a fan, I understand what Peter Bendix is doing. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to get more athletic, especially in the outfield and defensively. And Sanchez could be on his way out this season at some point.
That's one thing that I'm hopeful that the Reds are going to be buyers at the deadline, because Steve and myself have been talking about the Reds' biggest need for what feels like it's been 84 years. It's not been that long, but it's definitely been the last 2 seasons. Great movie, yeah. Got to see the museum over in Belfast. That was really cool. Anyway, nice. Love the Titanic. And sometimes it feels like the Reds outfield is the Titanic, because that's exactly what the Reds have needed for the last 2 years. Could they go get that guy in Jesús Sánchez? He was a guy that I kind of looked at last year at the deadline too. But definitely if he's available. I also remember a couple of the final outs on Tuesday felt like they were flyouts to Sanchez. And every time he caught it, he had this big old smile on his face. Yeah. I was just like, he's smiling. Okay, I get it. He's having fun. That's cool. He's having fun. But no, I find that intriguing, because moving forward, the Reds have an opportunity. They're facing Colorado, who's got the worst record in Major League Baseball. They're facing St. Louis, who I still believe is going to be part of the cellar of the NL Central. They're facing Washington, that's got a big-time negative run differential right now. It's time to make a little bit of hay before you run into Atlanta, who's starting to get right. And we're starting to see the Braves turn into what we expected more from them. That's going to be a 4-game set in Atlanta. So these next, next 13 games, the Reds have a real opportunity here, but you really need to build on some of the momentum that we've seen. I mean, we're starting to see Spencer Steer get a little bit right. He had a multi-hit game in Wednesday's win, and Jake Fraley has been hitting the ball really well here recently as well. And Noelvi Marte, who was very quickly dismissed from Major League spring training camp, and everybody was like, yeah, no, that makes sense. He's been bad and he's got to make it right. and he's been making it right ever since he came up, and he's really having some good at-bats here recently. So how do those guys really move forward in this lineup and support a pitching staff that, on the whole, especially from the starting pitching side, has been very good?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned Noel V. Marte. He crushed a home run against Edward Cabrera. I cannot recall a pitch that got out of the ballpark that fast. I mean, I don't have the exit velocity. It was a rocket. I mean, there's something there.
Well, it was 116.7, but almost 117. That was widely, that was, everybody was loving that one.
And then Matt McClain, for you guys, he's a player that's kind of off to a little bit of a slow start, but super talented. I think the Reds have a bright future. I didn't know their schedule for the next 2 weeks, but you just read it off. They can easily win all of those series if they just put it together, you know?
Should be. And I think that there's definitely a couple of numbers that are misleading on guys like McClain. Like, a lot of people are harping on the batting average, and his strikeout rate has not been good to begin this season, but his on-base percentage is very nice, and slugging percentage as well, looking pretty good. OPS plus wise, he's still above 100, even with that batting average, which is crazy to think. It just shows you the potential. And meanwhile, looking at what the Marlins have coming up, going to Seattle, I can tell you right off, I mean, it's going to be a tough pitched series, but the Mariners are gettable. The Reds should have beat them 2 out of 3, and I'm still a little bit mad about it. So I feel like the Marlins have a shot here to take maybe 2 out of 3 in Seattle. That might be a little over optimistic, but it could happen.
It could. It starts with the offense. You can't have another game in which you go 8 scoreless innings and only hit 1 home run. The power has to be there, because I'm looking at these pitching matchups. You got to face Logan Gilbert. You got to face some of the best pitchers that Seattle has. But Seattle's offense is a little iffy. You have Max Meyer starting the final game of that series. So I feel pretty confident now, coming off a 14 strikeout performance with Max. And it's a good opportunity. Now you have some momentum. I think momentum in baseball especially is a very underrated part of the game, considering we have 162 games. Oh, it's April. Maybe a team's just taking a day off or two. No, every game matters. We saw that last year in the postseason, the Diamondbacks missing it by a game. So the Marlins, they've won 3 in a row. They feel a little bit better about themselves. Can the starting pitching hold up? Can Cal Quantrill get out of the 3rd or 4th inning? He's the only major league free agent they've signed, true major league free agent, and he's been awful. If he does it again in Seattle, there's got to be a conversation about moving on from him, because you're throwing games away. And then you got LA, and that's a different story. The Shohei show is coming up, but I'll take one game.
That's going to be intriguing. I do find it intriguing, because like the Marlins, the way that they spend is honestly close. I mean, not close to what the Reds do, but the Reds have just been so reticent to sign multi-year free agent contracts here recently. Yeah. And I remember, the mid-2000s Marlins and the guys that went to the World Series, the Miguel Cabrera Marlins and teams like that. Like, I kind of feel like if Augustine Ramirez can hit that way, and maybe if he stays a catcher, if he moves to first base, however that turns out, you might be able to build a lineup around him. How do you build that pitching staff with him too? Because I know that you mentioned this early on in the season. It feels like Sandy Alcantara's on his way out.
Yeah, that really, to me, is the storyline of this season. The development of the younger players like Augustine Ramirez, and what do they do with Sandy? Because he's not pitching to his best. And that's because you're coming off a major career-altering surgery. Tommy John is no joke. The stuff is still there. He's got the velocity, but he's struggling to locate. He's struggling to finish at bats. I mean, the Reds hit probably 7 or 8 100-mile-per-hour lasers off him. Even the outs were hard hit. And Sandy, I trust in him. I know he has confidence in himself, and he's going to figure it out down the road. But when do you trade him? Do you hold on to him and trade him in the offseason? Honestly, I'm of the conclusion that it's a foregone deal that he's gone. It's just a matter of when. However, they do have reinforcements in the minors, a lot of young pitching talent. One thing the Marlins have been really good at is developing those pitchers. You have Thomas White, Robbie Snelling. These guys are going to be good in a few years. I would not be surprised if by 2027, we're talking about the Marlins in spring training as a legit playoff contender, not just a hopeful, but a contender, if the development of these young hitters and pitchers continue.
And nobody's got a more sniper-like accuracy when it comes to World Series, because when the Marlins make the playoffs, they usually go to the World Series and they usually win.
That's true. 2 out of 3.
Crazy. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, and I did look it up. I was curious as to what you mentioned. You're right. There were 10 hard hit balls off of Sandy Alcantara in Wednesday's game. That's crazy to me.
I don't know if that's just the Reds. Credit to the Reds. They're seeing it well, but you also can't leave it over the middle of the plate, you know? You're a veteran. You got to do better.
I saw that a little bit with Ashcraft whenever he came in Tuesday night. There was definitely some hard hits off of him that it was like, you know, a four-seamer that he left over the middle or a spinning cutter that didn't quite cut. It's definitely a thing. Like, you're not going to get away with mistakes. Doesn't matter if it's to the Reds or the Marlins. As much as somebody might look at their team batting average and think they know who they are, they're still professionals. So they're still going to take advantage of those. But hey, that's we're going to finish the series in July, right before the All-Star break. Reds and Marlins at Great American Ballpark. Until then, you can keep up every single day with the movements of the Marlins with Jeremiah over on Locked On Marlins, and you can keep up with the Reds with myself and Steve Offenbaker on Locked On Reds, because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.